Hello, everyone. Welcome to Voting Trend for August 16th. My name is Dave, where we look at news as far as campaigns and elections and so on. So, we're going to go ahead and delve right into the news today. Now, I am going to make an announcement here. I did my first video in a long time yesterday, and I had a number of errors and a number of big errors, too. Honestly, I've been in the political wilderness since January until now. I have actually actively tried to avoid current politics, but after this whole redistricting thing going on in Texas and just seeing how certain people want to just change the rules to benefit them, yeah, it's time to start talking about campaigns and elections and give my commentary as well on certain things. So that is why I've come back. So forgive me if I'm going through some of these steps again to being caught up with things, because I've literally, if there was anything political I wanted to hear, I like threw it away. I'm like, I do not want to hear that. Now it's just getting to the point where yeah, I need to get back to doing this. And I need to get back to doing this too, because I find a lot, there's a lack of election content out there. So I do want to build on that election content, which is the reason why I'd like to be able to do this at least every weekday. So let's go ahead and look at some of the news that we have that developed overnight and has developed over the last few days. As I mentioned in my last video, there was a special election for Delaware State House in the 20th district, and the Democrat did win that. The only thing is that the actual margin is essentially the same margin as we had in the general election, where the Democrat won the election by a very, very small amount, just a little over 1% of the vote. So does that mean anything? Probably not. It probably doesn't mean much. So the fact that this was a pure replication of the last election really means we can't glean anything from this. But I wanted to mention that had the Republican won, then that might have shown a Republican split. Had the Democrat been able to pull out a 3, 4, 5 point lead, that could have shown a swing toward the Democrats. I mean, this is obvious, but were there national implications here? No, the seat basically stayed the same, and that's it. So we wait for the next special elections. Now, in New Jersey, we can see that the Republicans are starting to gain when it comes to voter registration. Now, the Democrats still do have a lead when it comes to that. But if we go down to what we have down here, we can see between August 17th and August 25th. So we can really say 8 months after Trump took office in his first term until now, we can see that the Republicans have gained 433,000 voters, which was a 35% rise compared to what they had. Now, we can see that the Democrats gained 427,000 voters, which was a 20% increase. So the increases are important, but what's important too is, yes, there is a 6,000 vote difference. So overall, we really can say between that time that the Republicans have a 6,000 vote advantage out of nearly what, 850, 900,000 voters who have registered. So it isn't as big as you think. It's kind of keeping things somewhat even. Democrats still have a huge advantage when it comes to voter registration in the state, but you're not seeing the Democrats pull out a gap. You are seeing more people register as Republican, which means that if that's a 35% rise, then you're talking about maybe people who had been independents previously or non-party affiliates now all of a sudden becoming Republicans. The worry for the Democrats here is that people who are on the voter rolls now will eventually be dropped because they've moved or they've died or they've been inactive or something like that. So that's something to keep an eye on. Now, let's go ahead and go to some of the Senate races. Very little to talk about in the Senate today. Congressman Wesley Hunt is announcing that he's running for Senate against John Cornyn and Ken Paxton. And will he be able to compete? I think he's basically a I think he's seeing a middle ground as far as the Republican electorate, that people don't want Paxton because he's far right, people don't want Cornyn because he comes across as establishment, and he's trying to hit that center. A little bit establishment, but a little bit MAGA as well. Could it work? I don't think so. But this election here will tell us a lot about whether, where the Republican Party is going in Texas. So we're going to keep an eye on who else enters this primary. I think just a Cornyn-Paxton dynamic is great. And then again, if Paxton wins, he's won statewide. The Democrats have to ask themselves right now, do they want to throw a lot of money in Texas each and every election or not? Is it a good you might not get the win now, but is it a good investment for the future? We'll see what happens in Texas. Now, I'm also going to talk about a member of Congress here, Darren LaHood from Illinois. And I have this in the Senate part because LaHood decided that he is going to run for re-election to Illinois' 16th district, which means that he is not going to be running for the U.S. Senate seat that is now opened up by Dick Durbin's retirement. So this, to me, LaHood was about the best candidate that the Republicans could have to run statewide here in the state of Illinois. So that is actually good news for the Democrats. I think that means that the seat is retained by the Democrats. Now we're going to jump over to state politics, but we're going to first start with the Supreme Court in North Carolina. So you do see Justice Anita Earls lead GOP challenger Sarah Stevens in fundraising for the 2026 North Carolina Supreme Court race. Of course, with all the redistricting going on right now at the state level, having Supreme Courts on your side or against you is a very important thing. And she's raising money by quite a bit. So she has $482,000 cash on hand compared to Stevens' $156,000 cash on hand. Now, if Roy Cooper is also able to bring in a lot of money, push that. If Earls is able to bring in a lot of money, push that. You do see a good Democratic core that could actually help maybe push some other races in the Democratic direction. So this looks really good for the Democrats in North Carolina. It does seem like a lot of money and fundraising and higher profile candidates could help. It's the tide that lifts all boats. And with that being the case, we have to look at Vivek Ramaswamy. That's another tide that rises all boats, but in the Republican direction. So you see Ramaswamy holds a massive cash advantage in Ohio's 2026 race for governor. So this is another reason why I think that Sherrod Brown could lose when it comes to U.S. Senate, because most voters are straight party voters. If you look at all of the races, there might be usually between a 2% and at best a 7% sway between people voting Democrat and Republican, depending on the county, depending on the precinct. Usually it's around 3%. You can say there's about if you look at the precinct level data, you can usually say 3% of voters are usually going to swing. Now, if Sherrod Brown lost by 3.5%, that 3% swing doesn't really help you, right? But what really hurts the Democrats in general is that Ramaswamy, if the Ohio governor's race becomes the headline race in Ohio, Ramaswamy's cash is going to just flood the market. And his money and what he does is going to be the tide that has all the other boats rising at the same time. The question is, fundraising is not an indicator of popularity. Do people want to vote for Ramaswamy? I think right now he is in a good position, but that can change because he is, on a personal level, I think he's extremely annoying. So we'll keep an eye on this. But if Ramaswamy is going to be thrown that much cash into Ohio, then I don't see, again, tide that lifts all boats. I do not see how Sherrod Brown actually wins. Now let's go over to Florida. So the only candidate on the Democratic side who has announced that they're running for Florida governor is former Republican David Jolly, who I think would easily lose the general election. I'm going to do a commentary on that in the near future, mostly because he's not shown that he's ever been a Democrat, with the exception of saying he doesn't like Trump and registering as a Democrat. His vote record in Congress is going to kill him either in a primary or a general election. Anyway, Jerry Demings floats trial balloon, and Jerry Demings is the Orange County mayor, used to be Orange County sheriff, which we'll talk about in a second here. And he says, yes, I'm considering running for a higher office. He says he's considering a statewide office, which he's not going to run for one of the constitutional officers. So that means that he's probably going to run for the gubernatorial position. Now, Jerry Demings is the husband of Val Demings, who ran against Marco Rubio in one of the worst campaigns in recent history in Florida. And it wasn't bad because they didn't they made bad decisions. They just literally did nothing. Like it was just like, yeah, we're the candidate. It was just the worst campaign. Now, if he has if Jerry Demings has the people who ran Val Demings' campaign to run his campaign, then he's going to lose. I mean, he's going to lose the primary. Well, he could do well in the primary. Now, there's a third candidate we should talk about in Florida. That is Al Lawson. So he is a former congressman from the Panhandle. He has floated the idea that he's going to run as well. So we could see in the next few days or next few weeks, the Florida governor's race on the Democratic side go from just Jolly being the main candidate to having Demings, Lawson, and Jolly being the three candidates, making that interesting. Now, one of the problems that Demings has is a problem on his left. So a story came out, or what he talked about, this came out a few days ago. Florida mayor shares a startling explanation for his collaboration with ICE. So he has decided, or he came in and said that Orange County is going to work with ICE. Really stupid decision to make in an overwhelmingly Democratic county. But he does say here, the reason why he did this was he made the decision under protest and in extreme duress. Now, if you're running for governor, the chief executive of the state of Florida, and you say, you know, I was really pressured to make this deal with ICE, that doesn't say much for your leadership quality, does it? So he's going to get a hit from the left on this. He's got to figure out a way to put the shit back in the horse. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. So we'll see what happens. But you are getting to a point where the Democratic primaries are becoming less and less important in Florida because you're having less and less Democrats voting them. So maybe he gets enough to win in a very strong three-way race. We'll talk about Al Lawson later. We're just not going to mention it today. He kind of hinted that he was going to run a few days ago. He might have actually announced. I don't think he actually announced. I think he just hinted that he was going to do it. Now, let's go to Alaska. Now, Alaska is an interesting one because you have Lisa Murkowski, who is toying with the idea here of running for governor. Now, this would be a carbon copy of how she got in the Senate, right? So Frank Murkowski, her dad, was the senator, won election to governor. Then he was able to appoint a senator, a U.S. senator, to replace him in the U.S. Senate, and he appointed Lisa Murkowski. If you go to my history channel, my election history channel, I just did an entire video about the Alaska Senate race in 2010, which looks at the history of Lisa Murkowski as well. So go ahead, check that video out as well. I'll link it down below. Anyway, there's no resign to run law in Alaska. And I don't know if they've changed it since Frank Murkowski appointed his daughter to the U.S. Senate. But if she decides to run for U.S. Senate, she keeps her Senate seat. She don't have to resign to run. If she loses somehow, then she just stays in U.S. Senate and runs for re-election in U.S. Senate, which would be 2028. If she becomes the U.S. senator, if she becomes the governor of Alaska, then as far as I know right now, unless there's been laws changed since her father appointed her, that would be an appointment, she would appoint somebody, cover the next 2 years. Then after that, then it's going to be another election, which could be an opportunity in 2028, the next presidential race, for the Democrats to actually capture Alaska. that's way, way far in the future, right? That's 3 years in the future. But let's see how this plays. She hasn't said she's going to run yet, but she has hinted that she is considering it. Now, I just threw this in because it has to do with the governor's race. Senator Ryan Fazio, who's a Republican state senator in Connecticut, has created an exploratory committee to determine if he wants to run statewide. Now, in Connecticut, we still don't know if Ned Lamont's going to run for a third term or not. He has not made that public. That probably will weigh a lot on how this race goes. But I just wanted to mention that this state senator is running. Again, all the links down below for all the articles that we look at in this. Now, if we go over to Georgia, we have another Democrat entering the race, Michael Thurmond, who was the CEO of DeKalb County. He is going to be entering this race. Now, we already do have a few people in here. We have a state senator already, Jason Estevez, and former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Now, I don't know the intricacies of Georgia politics. So Jason Estevez, I don't know who that really is. But Keisha Lance Bottoms has been very vocal, as you know, when she was the mayor of Atlanta. And then since then, she's been on MSNBC, she's been on CNN. So people do know who she is. She does have a high profile name recognition out there. So we'll see. We're just seeing these, especially these primaries in Georgia, obviously not against Ossoff for the Democratic side. We are starting to see some robust primaries happen. And I talked about some of those primaries yesterday. We're seeing these robust primaries happen. And then finally, I wanted to talk about Marsha Blackburn. She's running for governor, U.S. Senator right now. Reason I'm keeping this at the end is that she just becomes governor. They're going to get somebody like her to be U.S. Senator. And even if there's a special election, it doesn't matter. They're just going to put somebody in there that's like Marsha Blackburn, right? So this doesn't really change the dynamic. It's just somebody switching from one party to the other. And unlike Murkowski, where we say, if she wins the governor's race and then appoints somebody, but that person isn't as strong, and that's a possibility for some Democrat to win in the future, there's like a progression. Here, there just isn't. There aren't any really any new polls. I think there was another poll that came out that showed by YouGov, the Economist YouGov poll, which I cannot get a link to, showing that the Democrats are leading in the generic congressional ballot, which they have been for a while. So that continues to be good news for the Democrats. Otherwise, yeah, that's basically the news for today. So you're now all caught up on who's in the battle and what's going on in some of these states. So I will see you all tomorrow to recap any election news that has happened over the last few days. So have a great day wherever it is you are. Make sure to subscribe and like, and please check out my history channel, because honestly, I spend a lot more time on my history channel than I do on this. That's my main puppy right now. So yeah, I'll talk to y'all later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.